Finally, all I can say is finally, because at long last, we have the furtherance of a plot point an alarming number of fans believe Horikoshi had outright forgotten. Yet here we are. With the previous chapter, we had a now unstable Shigaraki fleeing from Star's comrades as he had taken the Nomu's wing quirk prior to its detonation. The only thought in his mind being the passage of New Order onto a new person, as otherwise he would be internally reduced to nothing, as New Order, being the will of Star and Stripe, was set to eviscerate all quirks in its path, and that includes All for One. And with that, a new thought would emerge based on the prior sentiment Star had expressed to them: All Might. It was always about All Might at every turn of discomfort. At each and every hurdle for Shigaraki, there was a blatant reminder of All Might, and it was infuriating. So now, harnessing that anger and aggression, the villain would further propel himself at speeds the pursuing aircrafts simply could not keep up with. We then found ourselves elsewhere in the company of two escaped convicts, who, rather than causing trouble in a big city like so many other escapees, they decided to adopt a domestic and quiet life. And luckily for them, the place they had settled upon had both lighting and running water. But unfortunately, to crash their fun would be this now absolutely raging villain. The intent was to steal the young man's quirk and replace it with New Order, as to isolate it from other quirks and preserve the power. However, it was too late. All for One had so many quirks within it that such a revolt ultimately resulted in destruction of New Order as well. It was to Star a shame that she couldn't manage to destroy the entirety of the power in time, but at the very least she would express to the villain that so long as people are willing to stand up for one another, the will of a hero will survive and eventually defeat him. As from deep within the compound of Shigaraki and All for One, there was Shimura Tenko, calling out to be saved by Deku. The powers that be attempted to pick up Shigaraki's trail to no avail. They found evidence of the Port Town struggle, but nothing more. The entire world would learn of Star's defeat that very same day, an unsettling reality that scared the various nations of the world into non-resistance and isolation. A regression of sorts in regards to progress that thankfully wasn't entirely without its merits, as apparently each of the aircrafts present during the battle possessed data from the conflict, reading every biosignature and analyzing every present quirk. Information that would surely prove itself to be invaluable, as a study of the villain would be alluded to along with a shot of Central Hospital. From there, All Might would tell the students what had happened and the shining opportunity Star had afforded them, as they now had a week to prepare for the fight of their lives. With this latest chapter, Deku would question the status of Shigaraki in terms of damage, which All Might would answer by saying that according to the battle data the Americans had recorded, that the quirk New Order was more or less like a poison to Shigaraki, and that despite lacking a definitive number or anything, the villain had lost a tremendous amount of quirks thanks to this parasitic exchange, as Momo and Jiro would consider how major of an opportunity this was. At the moment, the bulk of the country's heroic forces were busy ensuring the safety of the populace, and so while being busy with that, finding All for One was difficult enough, but with this injury in mind, he was bound to be even more careful than usual. But it didn't matter if they found him now or later, as one way or another, all-out war was inevitable. What for us as fans should be really exciting, as for as crazy as the war arc was, it was merely a precursor for what is to come. And as a side note, I would like to say that our Greek mythology mega theory is still going on strong, as Deku, being Zeus, has now been revitalized thanks to the aids of the quote-unquote other gods, who are the students, signified not only by his return to them, but also the return of the light within his eyes. But yeah, the enemies of the final war being that of Shigaraki, by far their most dangerous enemy, All for One's true body, the mad villain Dabi, whose firepower rivals even that of the #1 hero Endeavors, the ever sneaky Toga, the remaining 6 near high-end Nomu, and lastly the remnants of the Paranormal Liberation Front, As opposed to prioritizing the capture of All For One in this time, what they truly needed to accomplish according to All Might was the detainment of the many escaped convicts. Shoji would then note that there were likely even more enemies abound that they were unaware of, as All Might would agree. Their number of enemies was bound to rise. Meanwhile, they had already lost more than half of their forces from the previous confrontation. And so All Might would express his desire for them to all grow that much stronger with this final week, even if only just a little bit, as they would need every ounce of their strength to protect not only themselves, but all those who they hold dear. As Bakugo would loudly interject that they had been doing just that for a while now. Uraraka and Ida would point out that All Might was so busy with Deku and had only been around for a few moments before heading out again. Ojiro would then express that since the war, they had all been training with the Wild Wild Pussycats. And I'm so sorry, there is no way that that is a serious statement. The Pussycats, really? That's your idea of training? We are gearing up to face a global threat that whole countries are afraid of, and this is what you're talking about? Being trained by a group where 2 of their members struggled against Spinner and Magne, arguably the 2 weakest members of the League of Villains, while the other 2 members of the group were defeated and 1 was captured. Are you serious? This is a team that at the height of their fame was ranked number 32, and later, on account of their hiatus, dropped to number 411 on the Hero Billboard charts. There is just no way that this is the training these kids are flexing right now. And I find it so funny that during a time like this, Kaminari is just playing with Ojiro's tail with a smile on his face. Tokoyami and Mina would make it clear that they intend to fight alongside Deku until the villains are defeated. And with that, Deku would tell everyone that Bakugo wanted to practice with him, that he even said he'll make sure Deku masters One For All, which really set Bakugo off, as according to him, he didn't say anything like that, that in reality, he just wanted to test out his new technique, Cluster. That if it could be effective against someone with the power of One For All, then it would certainly be of use against All For One and Shigaraki. So yeah, new developments for Bakugo, putting that quirk evolution to good use, which I am really excited about. Shoto would then look to himself following this statement and consider his own development. Kirishima would then offer himself to be a test dummy as well. And so yeah, it would seem that our predictions for what is to come with this training arc with our previous video are actually happening. And speaking of, you guys weren't the only ones laughing about that thumbnail. I mean, we were dying the entire way making this thumbnail for you guys, and hopefully you enjoyed it as much as we did. But yeah, the kids would all begin to playfully banter amongst themselves as All Might would think back to the beginning of the school year when they first received their costumes, then noting just how much they have all grown. Undeterred by the dangers ahead, they were full of hope and ready to proceed together. He would therefore consider this to be a major miscalculation of All For One's, as he knew all too well that Class 1A is strong. And with that, we would depart from UA and into the hiding place of the villains, as Shigaraki was screaming and retching in pain. And interestingly enough, would you believe it, Toga is here. Toga, who during the war was separated from the rest of the villains, is present for this. What is a tad bit anticlimactic for me, as I was hoping she would be up to a bit more by her lonesome and have a grand appearance, but perhaps by way of the search quirk they were able to find her and return her to the fold. The real All For One would then urge the quote, other him to calm down, that their quirk factor was damaged and out of commission for the time being, that so long as they were able to stall the advancement of their adversaries, they would be able to continue momentarily. The villain would cry out with an overwhelming desire for carnage fueled by a deep-seated hatred. He would therefore vow that so long as even a single person remembered All Might, his hatred would never end, which is a very alarming statement and a bold one at that. All For One proper would express a newfound level of understanding on account of their fused consciousnesses, as this violent rage was one he shared with the man. He would then pat the other him on the back and say that despite failing to steal New Order, they were still able to remove their greatest obstacle, now deciding to take things slower and be careful, as it is never a good idea to stick to a single plan anyways, that despite everything having been so meticulously planned, they would need to wait just a little while longer. Which would then take us to Dabi, who refused to wait any longer as he could not stand the sight of his father nonchalantly carrying on, as he would restlessly tap his foot in a way reminiscent to his mannerisms as a child. And you know, for Dabi, the character who had waited to reveal his true identity for so long, to be this antsy just goes to show how truly bothered he is. I mean, after all, that aspect of his plan was something he had worked towards for years, only for his father to seemingly bypass it in a matter of days. But to answer him, All For One would explain to Dabi that despite the two of them being very much alike, there was one major difference between them. He too is a person with only one goal in mind. However, he plans out many paths towards said goal. Routes that are for the most part intended for emergency use only. That everything he has ever done over the course of several decades was to ensure that it all leads towards his ultimate desire. A sentiment that, disregarding the villainous context, is something we here at Plot Armor can certainly relate to, which truly makes All For One such an incredible character for us. He'd leave the other him with Dabi until their body was perfected, yet during this time, Deku had officially returned to a now incredibly reinforced Yue. But it didn't matter, as there was the difference. All For One has a lot of friends, as now using the search quirk, the villainous fusion would pinpoint the presence of a particular entity, that of Invisible Girl, Toru Hagakure. And that was the chapter. Oh my goodness, the time has finally come to revisit the UA Traitor subplot. And this pretty much came out of nowhere because we have not addressed this subject in over 200 chapters now. And to be honest with you, Invisible Girl being the traitor isn't very exciting as is. This is a character we so vaguely know, and so the impact of this information is inherently reliant on the fact that there is a traitor more so than who the traitor truly is. Like, I'm no doubt expecting there to be a whole lot to learn about her character. However, it's not like the contrast will be all that great, as again, we don't really know her to begin with. There are a lot of possibilities as to what may be going on with her that we certainly intend to explore with another video. These stakes and or narrative risks being taken with this series are at this point to a lot of fans very safe, even if detrimentally so. If for instance the traitor was Sue or Kaminari, the response to this would be far greater and really hard-hitting, as a compelling conflict would no doubt be had by many. Yet with Invisible Girl, as of chapter 293, she didn't even rank within the top 40 of the Japanese popularity poll, but hey, I'm still interested to see her motivations, capabilities, and more than anything else, what she actually looks like. And if you'd like to be here for all that and more, be sure to subscribe to Plot Armor with notifications on, because when it comes to bringing you some of the best My Hero Academia content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.